don't necessarily pay attention to the animal I'm working with here. Pay attention to the behaviors, what I'm doing. So it may look like I'm just feeding Coco, but we've come a long way with Coco. Coco's been with us 2+ years now. Hello. This is an animal that when I first started working with him, 100% off contact, right? So watch how I'm feeding him. Coco is a resource guarder. I'm feeding him long things, okay, to protect my fingers. And what I'm looking for is the pace in which he grabs the food. Okay. You see that, how it's kind of snappy right there at the end? That was different than the first time I fed him. The first time it was very, I was looking for calm, smooth, not rapid movements. So the second time I fed him, he could have snapped at it because I sat here and talked to the camera with the snap pea in my hand. That's why I tell people, you're always training. The key question is, what are you training? And I said before, studies also show that, like, I'm being very careful. I don't usually sit down and pet him. Studies also show that social interaction is one of the most complex forms of enrichment for an animal. That social interaction can be incorporated into the animal's environment through training. Most people would say, I'm just petting him. I am training him. I am getting my fingers closer and closer. Social complexity can come in the form of them engaging with other animals. Here, like just a little bit ago, it looked like I was sitting here begging him to let me pet him. What I was doing was watching his eye contact with Rico, that's right behind me on that perch up there. This is why I train, because it adds complexity to the animal's environment. All right. It's a form of communication. It's a form of mental stimulation and physical stimulation. Okay, so how would I increase the complexity now? Ask him to come up here. I'm going to give him this one a little bit. Good. Hi. Okay, Rico's like, train me. Train me. One, three, turn in. I have a note on the refrigerator right behind us. Snap peas never to be put in food dishes because they are of high value here. So we get the animals working for them. Snow is our deaf and blind border collie. And she will circle and circle and circle or run laps, consistent repetitive behavior laps. When I see that, I get stressed because that's a sign of low stimulation in her environment. And I will let my dog training colleagues, friends chime in here. But when you're going to get a dog, do the research on the type of dog you get. Border collies are herding dogs. I didn't know I was getting a border collie. If I did, I wouldn't have gotten it because I can't. It's hard for me to provide what that animal needs in its life. Good. Good. One of the saddest things to see, for me to see, is an animal that doesn't engage in its environment. An animal that just sits there, hangs its head, or does very little in its environment. When I see Snow circling, when I go over and interact with her, I see her behaviors change. I see her body get calm. When I start asking her, this means come, because she can't see and she can't hear. This means come. The tail will wag, the head will drop, the body starts swaying, and I'm reading all those behaviors based on what they coincide with different interactions. So I call it calm behavior, and I say calm because I'll see her stop doing this and just go into, what would you like me to do? Give me something to do. So that training, and I often tell people, what I see from Snow when I train her is her saying thank you, because I'm communicating with her, I'm sharing information with her based on shaping and reinforcing small approximations in the beginning in our shaping plans. That's communication for her, and for an animal that can't see and can't hear, that's getting bumped by other animals or feeling different things in her environment that she's not aware of, I can tell she feels very safe when I'm working with her. I never leave the room without telling her I'm leaving the room. One small squeeze on her hips like this means stay very still. I'm going to be gone for a short amount of time. This on her side, means goodbye, I'm leaving for a long period of time. And I can tell through shaping those contingencies, she knows which one it means. And a lot of times with animals, they just want to know. Give them options that will allow them more choices and control over in their environment. And that, nice job, Coco. Nice job. Yeah. That's a little too fast. But that could be overstimulation because I just went like this. Internal states due to environment with external cues. Those external cues could be stressors that the animal has no way to escape, avoid. I already said they can be frustration induced. They can be fear induced because something is scaring them in the environment and they know they have no way to escape, leading to learned helplessness. It could be due to physical discomfort. I was just talking to a veterinarian on the phone the other day. Good. About how some of these behaviors, these abnormal repetitive behaviors, when she was telling me about some of these repetitive behaviors, I said, is the animal in pain? And she goes, funny you should say that, because after we amputated a certain part, that abnormal repetitive behavior extinguished, no longer exists. A lot of abnormal repetitive behaviors are due to attempts to replace a missing behavior. I have one competitor. And that is Mother Nature. I hold a high bar. It's not that I want to replace Mother Nature, by no means. But when I look out the window and see birds flying, and know that studies show that these birds can fly up to 40 miles a day, I'm just talking parrots. When you start talking about the other native species, then you're getting into migration. But zebras, giraffe, bears, walking, foraging, tens, hundreds of miles a day, I can't match that. But I can hold that bar so high thinking, I need to do better for this animal in my care. There's a plethora of studies out there that shows learned helplessness, meaning the animal knows how, no matter what it does, it has no control over the consequences of its behavior. Okay, there's numerous studies out there that show it impairs cognition related to depression, paranoid responses, we see that. Suspicion, we see that. Suspicion of intention, we see that. Frustration, we see that. Impairs cognition, we see that. So my saying this morning, if you're going to keep them, train them, all right? So we train all kinds of animals and numerous different species. Here I'm training a rat to place his 2 front feet on a foot target because that way I can control where that rat goes. If I need him to go back in the cage, throw that foot target in the cage, deliver reinforcer, where it happens to be banana baby food. Okay? There's a lot of abnormal repetitive behaviors on bears, and there's numerous different studies. There's one that I was reading about the bears at Lincoln Park Zoo when they gave them opportunities to control temperature of their environment by allowing them access to additional enclosures off exhibit dens, the abnormal repetitive behaviors started to decrease. So that's just something that's simple. Okay, allowing additional access, allowing control of temperature, but we need to build complexity. Here's what I said, Coco, when I first started training Coco, because a big part of my presentation is going to be on off-contact training. If you can't physically touch that animal, like I said, a lot of animals don't like to be touched. You don't have to. You can start mental stimulation through off-contact training, which then often moves to protective contact training, which then a lot of times moves to full contact. Okay, like what it has with Coco. I started off contact. Then I taught him a beak target through the cage bars, differential reinforcement of an incompatible behavior. If your beak is through the cage bars, you cannot bite me. You have the choice. Your beak comes out of those cage bars. This is for a photo from my beginning working with him a couple years ago, 3 years ago. If your beak comes out of between those cage bars, it's your choice. I'm going to teach you contingency. If your beak moves, so does your opportunity to be pet. So he chose to have his beak through the cage bars more. That's how I deliver tactile enrichment. Then when I started bringing him out of the cage, he already knew what this meant. That meant beak on chest, then I rub your head. Then I taught him the head target. And now you see I can do it without, if he'll allow me. So we're constantly shaping our behaviors, all right?